Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Tech Leaders Hub. So good to have you here today, watchers and listeners, and so good to have you, my dear guest, here today. Today, our guest is Itai Rosenblatt, engineering manager at Google. Itai, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you, Jacob. I'm humbled and a bit stressed, but looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, yeah, I'm extremely excited to chat with you today. I have to say, we got quite a bit of attention for this live stream today. Am I a little bit stressed too? Maybe just a tiny little bit. But I'm super excited to have this hour with you to be able to talk about your advice for first line managers and just tackle this topic together and help our audience here become better managers. Dear watchers and listeners, as always, this is for you. This is all because of you. So we hope you'll enjoy the show, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the recording. If you're watching live, let us know that you can hear us and let us know that you can see us. The first comments are already rolling in. I'm going to feature some of them here below in the video. Somebody saying good afternoon. It is literally 1 minute afternoon here in Poland. So, yep. Thank you. Victor saying fire emoji. Evelina saying hi. Thank you so much for your comments. Keep them coming in. I hope you got questions prepared because Itai is here to provide you with some answers. Okay, I will give people a minute or two to join in still. In the meantime, Itai, who do you hope is tuning in? Who do you think will benefit the most from our conversation?
Yeah, so I really hope people who will join today are people who are managers. I think that first, every manager can benefit from things we're going to cover today, but I think this specifically first-line managers might benefit the most here. I really hope they'll come and listen to the discussion and ask their questions. And I'm here to answer anything and give specific advice if it's relevant. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's perfect. And wow, so many comments are already rolling in next to that. Somebody saying on LinkedIn, sound and visuals are good. Sound is perfect. Lucas Gmiss is saying hi. Hi, Lucas. And some more comments here. I'm sorry, I'm cycling through them quite quickly, but there's quite a few. All right, great. So, like I mentioned, we'll get to a lot of what you just mentioned and get into the advice for first line managers in just a sec. First, though, I did want to get, when I think about how this all started, I love the conversation that we had even before we went live when we were preparing for this. It's like, I have something prepared for number one tip for tech leaders. I know I've seen the episodes, I know the structure, so you know what's coming up next, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's do that. Itai, I like to give the people watching Tech Leaders Hub some value up front before we get into your background and everything else. So the traditional Tech Leaders Hub question for you, what is your number one tip for tech leaders?
I won't try and sound surprised because we saw it coming. So my number one tip for managers and first-line managers specifically will be find your support group. So whenever you become a manager, you start being an IC and you became a manager, it's a very lonely position. It doesn't stop being lonely, and you should find a support group to help you. One, either to vent and just get stress out, or to get a recommendation, because there is no Stack Overflow for managers, right? So
Right.
find your support group, find people you feel comfortable and vulnerable with, and lean into that. That will help you tremendously, both professionally and to deal with all the stress and personal hurdles.
There's no Stack Overflow for managers. I can feel that in my gut, seriously. That is so true. And it's a great piece of advice. I agree wholeheartedly. My usual question to follow this up is, do you have any tips on how to find your support group, form your support group? What kind of people from what kind of areas of your life and career would be a good fit here?
Sure. So I think that people from your personal life is always good to have, like your spouse, your significant other, just friends. That's always nice. But you should find people who are really intimate with the day-to-day work you're having. So you don't have to give so much context every time or go very wide and like do some abstractions so they can get you straight away. So first of all, whenever you're in a workplace, I would find like your work spouse. So someone you have a good click with. It's better if you're not directly working with one another, like a sister team or a sister organization. So on one hand, they know the material, but on the other hand, you know that their intentions are true and they don't have any hidden agenda.
Yeah.
And so take this relationship to the next level by just start venting, start getting advice, be there for the other guy, just give them and hope you get back as well. So that's one way to do it. And another way to do it, which is not or, it's like, and my mother has a saying, it doesn't translate well to English, but there is something genius with and rather than or. So you should have both. So one is a work spouse, and the other one is there are support groups, like just teams of managers who can bounce ideas one another. There are some Facebook groups for that. I know I'm a member of one in Israel, which has like 300 managers, which is awesome. People are bouncing ideas. We have a roundtable initiative in Google where you like teams of 5 to 7 managers meet regularly and just everyone give their problem which they're facing and get feedback from other people. Wow. So these type of things, either you have them in the organization you have or initiate it. I think that's great. It gives you different perspectives on the problem you have.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I also love the sentiment of not or, but and. You mentioned this concept when we were talking also before the session a few weeks back. And since then, I actually found a work spouse for myself. You know who you are, so just saying hi if you're watching this. In the meantime, we got some comments about this coming in. Krzysztof is saying hi. He's also saying great advice. There's another Itai here with emojis. Marcin Zabawa from STX is saying Stack Overflow for managers would be great. It really would. I feel like the kind of barrier here is that making it public, like a Stack Overflow kind of thing, would maybe not breach confidentiality, but sometimes these challenges that you're facing are a little bit personal, so you'd rather discuss them in a small group rather than putting them online. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Another point is that for the same reason I mentioned, you should probably find someone who's closer to your organization. You don't want to give a whole context just to ask a very small question. You need to build a relationship with someone. When you say something, they just get it and they know what you're talking about. Because just, you have a very simple managerial problem with one of your people, but you need to give an entire context about what are we working on, how long has he been in the team, what are my challenges. So it becomes too hard to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to introduce like my company is X, our business is X, our culture is structure, etc. I absolutely feel that. A few more highs that I'm going to feature just really quickly here. And Michael has a question about the name of the support group in Israel. Do you know it off the top of your head?
Sure. It's called Managers for Managers in Facebook. Shout out to the Managers for Managers group. If you have my LinkedIn probably in the invite. If you send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll make sure to send you an invite to the group.
There you go. Message Itai about it. And I especially like this comment from Gal. You people are mentioning a lot of emojis. It's hard to read them out loud.
Gal is also a member of the group, so it's great.
He's on the group. Okay, there you go. All right. So thanks for that. Wow, that 8 minutes in, and we already had some great advice here. So thank you for mentioning that. So now, okay, people probably want to know a little bit more about you before we get into kind of the main topic of the session, Itai. So could you give a little bit of kind of the background, what you've done thus far, your kind of highlights from your career? What do you think helped you kind of land where you are right now?
Okay, so I'll try to give like the short pitch of how I got where I am today.
Sure.
So I was in the intelligence Air Force in the Army. After the Army, I worked as a product manager for the Army. After that, I went and worked at Cisco for about 5 years, which was a great experience. After my son was born, I moved to ScaleIO, which is an Israeli startup which was acquired by EMC, later became Dell. And that was the first place where I got my managerial experience. I took lead of a team of 4 engineers, grew it to 12. Served also the technical leader there. I was there for about 3 years. After that, I left with one of the co-founders of that startup to fund another startup in the crypto space. We've been there for about 2 years or so, and then we started to start our own company. During that time, I started the Ace the Code interview, which is a mentoring program for engineers to better excel in interviews. And I also worked as an IC and a freelancer. And after that, I started working at Google as an engineering manager, which is what I'm doing today.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of the short version of it. I'm particularly curious about Ace, the code interview, because that's something that you started kind of on your own, just to help people, succeed in these code interviews. Can you tell me a little bit more about the origin story here? What led you to do that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good story, because I think it also relates to one of the things we wanted to talk about today. So I had a friend in ScaleIO who asked me for a favor to help a friend of hers get ready for a technical interview. And I said, sure, I don't mind. And then we went for a beer. I met the guy. We sat for like 3 hours. We did an interview session in mock-ups and everything. And I gave him some advice. And about a month later, he was accepted into a place. And he was very appreciative. And he said that the feedback really helped him. And I was like, great, that was fun. I think probably 2 or 3 years later, that same person told me, hey, I have another friend who also wants help. Are you able to help her? And in general, I think that would be a great idea if you start a company doing that. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, maybe I'll do that. So I don't know if she's here. It's Miri. And yeah, so that was the reason why I started Ace the Code interview. The premise of that was that there are a lot of people who are helping engineers to get ready for technical interviews, but most of them, at least in Israel, are HR or coaches or stuff like that, but not engineering managers who interview the hundreds of people and interview themselves in many places. So that hands-on experience was missing, and that's what I've done. So I think I prepared like 7 or 8 people. I'm glad to say that they all got jobs, which is great.
Awesome.
But then I stopped in order to work for Google.
Yeah, I get that. So, wow, I'm sure these people must be very grateful for the help, and it kind of relates to something that I know that kind of is in the back of both our minds, and I wanted to touch upon it as soon as I can. Like this, you mentioned this concept of kind of engineered serendipity, right? Does that connect
Right.
here? Can you
Yeah,
talk more about that?
totally. So I think that serendipity isn't just something that just happened. It has to be engineered, because in order to be in the right place in the right time, you actually have to go places, right? No one gets to be in the right place in the right time sitting on their couch at home. So the idea is that you have to put yourself out there and be open to opportunities. And the best way that I found, it's not my idea, but the best way that I found to do that is just to give. Be ready to just give to people, not to expect anything back, but just to give in order to give and to be beneficial for others, and eventually you'll get something back. So there's Gary Vaynerchuk, who is an entrepreneur and has a very big media company in the US. He has a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook, where the premise is that you have to give all the time. Just jab, jab, jab. Don't expect to get anything back. Just give, 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 give. Eventually, one of two things will happen. One, you're known, right? People know that they can come to you and they can get your advice. So that's also very fulfilling for some people. I know it is for me. Another hand, so some opportunities might arise because they might know someone, or they might have an idea for you, like the one with the Ace Recorder interview, and they will give it to you because you helped them. And the other thing is that maybe you want to ask something of these people, and the fact that you were able to give them so much before gives you the right to actually ask for it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, just asking for something from someone you haven't done anything for is, you can do it, but the possibility that they'll help is smaller than if you've done so much for him.
Yeah, and I believe in what you're saying very, very strongly. I've seen that even in my own life. It's like sometimes people reach out to help, and I want to help them. I try to help them. I'm not always sure what's going to kind of follow from that, but something usually does. So I think it's a great piece of advice.
And even if it doesn't, you help someone. That's great.
Yeah,
I think that most of the people who are here are probably lucky enough to have time in their life to help someone else. So it's good to do that as well.
Yeah, and you might find some serendipity along the way. I wanted to highlight one comment that we got, actually a question. Krzysztof is mentioning that he would like to know a little bit more about this support group concept, a little bit
Sure.
more detail here. I'm all here for the people watching and listening. Let me read out the question, okay? And then let's tackle it together. So Krzysztof is saying being a leader is very lonely. It's hard to share your problems with others who do not know the context. Very true. The idea with a roundtable is great. Could you say something more, for example, how it is structured?
Sure. So just one step back, I think that the biggest change of the loneliness is when you become a first-line manager, because as an individual contributor, the people who you are in the trenches with are the people who you can also vent to and get advices from. And once you become a first-line manager, the people who you are in the trenches with are exactly the people you cannot get advice from, and you cannot share with, and you cannot vent with.
You can't vent to them, yeah.
So that's a big change. Regarding the roundtables, so there are various types of structures. Some do it more structured, some less. I can give you a few examples of how I've seen it work, but obviously it really depends on the group itself, and every group has their own dynamics. So I think that 5 to 7 people is a good amount of people, because you get to get intimate, but it's not too many people, so it becomes tiresome to hear everyone's opinions and talks. Besides, just first of all, you have to build a personal connection, right? You have to be vulnerable. You have to come prepared to share and get advice. And the ways that it's usually structured, or the way I see it work, is that someone comes with and say, "Hey, they have like this color coding checkup. Are you like a traffic light? Are you green, orange, or red? Like, I'm red today because this and that happened, or I'm green today because this happened to me." And if someone is red or orange, that's a cue to go deep and understand how you can help them. And then they present their dilemma or their problem with the team, and they get like various feedback from for the team, and whoever clicks the most can also take it later offline. But the idea is to like share, like, okay, this also happened to me. That's very similar to this. Maybe you can try this and this and that. Like, give them give the person who shared their problem, give them a bunch of things that they can try. But also the objective of this is to make the person who shared find someone who really clicks with him on this problem, and then take it offline to talk one-on-one on actually how to solve it.
Wow, okay. That's great, because you shared so much more kind of tactical detail here that I can now envision this kind of meeting so much better. Like this color coding, for example, I wouldn't have thought of that, but it helps you prioritize, right? If somebody's coming in kind of bright red, okay, we have to tackle that person's question first. And then switching from the group to one-to-one support ensures that you don't spend the whole meeting just tackling this one problem that a few people might be engaged in a lot, but some others might not be so much. So I love everything that you just mentioned here. Krzysztof, thank you so much for the question. That helped us get so much more nice detail out of here. One more follow-up question from me then. These meetings, how long do they usually kind of last in your experience?
So they usually last about an hour. We get either 1 or 2 problems out in the group. I think it really depends. If the issue resonated with a lot of people, you spend more time. If you see that it only resonates with a few people, you let them take the discussion later offline, and you go to the next thing. But I think it's also good to have quiet time, which is not around specific issues, just to build the chemistry between the group and get to know each other, stuff like that.
Okay. And you think, obviously I think it depends on the scale of the organization, but I envision this kind of support group, it might be managers from kind of the same company once they reach some kind of headcount level?
Yeah, so again, there are many ways to do it, but you want to have people, I think the logic behind how to choose the groups is, one, they shouldn't be directly working with one another. So not the same manager, for example, maybe 2 levels at least above. Secondly, they should tackle similar daily problems, and that comes from similar parts of the organization. And are there managers of managers or just managing individuals? Because the manager of managers has different problems than people who are managing just ICs. So you should try to keep it a bit homogeneous, so people won't just feel lost in the discussion.
Right. Okay. Right. So that's important to keep in mind. That sounds like such a great idea. I feel like that's something we could even try at STX next, but I'm not sure how the people on the call feel about that from the managers at STX. Anyway, Krzysztof, thank you again so much for the follow-up question. Watchers and listeners, the Q&A is ongoing. You don't have to wait for the end of the session. If something catches your attention, you want us to go deeper, you want some more details, just ask your questions, and we'll try to tackle all of them, all of the ones that are relevant. I wanted to move on to we went back to the support group thread for just a second. So I wanted to go back to creating opportunities and get some more detail here too. So like engineered serendipity, I really love that phrase. I feel like, that should be somewhere on the title of a book or something. Just, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, just saying.
There probably is someone.
there might be, right? So I'm thinking, as a manager, engineering manager, for example, what kind of support do you think is important to give? What kind of ideas can you give managers for what they can do? Helping with interviews, that was a great one, right? Do you have any more kind of specific examples of how to actually start giving more and start engineering that serendipity?
Sure. So I think it really depends on where you're at and what lies ahead of you. And I think it's like a snowball. Once you get it rolling, so people know they can come to you, and you get more people coming to you and asking for questions. So it's the hardest to start because no one knows you and you haven't done it before. But once the word gets around, people will come to you and you'll get more opportunities in front of you. So the beginning is always hard. First of all, a lot of places have like mentoring or coaching programs where you can volunteer to be a mentor for someone you don't know. So that's always a good place to start because someone did the work for you. They found the match and you just go and help that person. So that's a good place to start. I think that probably part of the thing is actually a support group, right? Because if you find a support group or a work spouse and you see someone who is struggling, so go out of your way and help them, even if they didn't ask them for it, right? So go and offer your help. So that's also one of it. And I think the other thing is it's part career planning and part engineered serendipity. So for example, when I chose to go to ScaleIO, one of my main reasons to choose that company was I want to be near people who are going to do stuff in the future. And I want to be in the right place in the right time. So when they actually go and do other stuff, I'll be there and they can call on me. So even if it's not, there are other reasons to find other places to work at in the same time. I don't know, better pay, closer to home, whatever whatever makes you choose a workplace. Choosing a workplace that might give you opportunities in the future because you're near someone who has done a lot of things and you believe he will do more things in the future might set you up for that serendipity.
So do you think it might make sense to join a company, well, not exclusively, but partially just to do some networking in there to make the connections that are going to pay off in the future?
In my opinion, for sure. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I joined ScaleIO. I mean, my reasons were I want to get managerial experience and I want to be close to these guys. They seem awesome and they'll probably do more stuff in the future. So obviously everyone has their own reasons. If it's money, I don't know, everyone with their own situation. But I think that if you are able to, someone said, I don't know if there's luck, if there's such a concept as luck, but if you're someone who you seem very lucky, if there's nothing like luck and it's all skill, go learn from them, right? So be next to them and learn from them. And if there is luck, so stand next to them and they're lucky, you'll be lucky by proxy.
By extension, yeah, I feel that. Okay, so yeah, and I feel that very strongly. This reminds me of how my approach to people leaving STX Next changed, for example, because I used to be really depressed when people announced that they were moving on, seeking other opportunities, but now in some cases, I even get a little bit excited because I know this person, I loved working with them, and now they're going to be in a different company. And who knows what might happen in the future? We can stay in touch and then exchange more diverse experiences. And then, people's career paths can go in various different ways. So I really feel what you're saying here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, networking is one of the best things to do in order for serendipity, right? Just expand your network, try and help people, stay in touch, even if it's once a month, saying a message, hi, how are you doing? Just keep that networking alive.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from that, Kasim in the comments is saying, Itai came to ScaleIO to work with me.
Yeah, he was the person I was talking to about.
There you go. All right. Thank you for joining the session, Kasim, by the way. Very nice to have you here. Okay, so we touched a lot upon the general threads of building a support group, doing networking, creating that kind of luck for yourself. Actually, before I move on kind of high level, I wanted to ask one more kind of specific question. Do you have any advice for, I'm imagining this manager, okay, I signed up for mentoring, I'm on this call with the person that I don't know, and I want to help them out and to hear them out and to share advice. Do you have any tips for that? How to structure like a call where you're supposed to be a mentor, you're supposed to help? Is there any specific way to give that person that's depending on you for mentoring a good result?
So I think in general, for managers in general, but also specifically for mentors, the key is to be a good listener, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being a good listener doesn't only mean you need to hear what the person is saying. Is trying to understand what he's trying to say to you, or what he wants to say but cannot say. Like, what does he need from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just came off a call with someone last night, and like, listen, you should feel very comfortable saying, hey, this is my situation. I need this from you. Okay, this is what I need from you at this time. So not everyone can be so concise in telling you what they need from you. But if you can ask them, okay, how can I help? What do you need my help for? How can I facilitate this? Just be there to help them and try and like understand what's the subtext.
Yeah, listening obviously is key. And sometimes I feel like, when I'm getting informal mentoring from others, it's like I'm not sure what problem I'm coming with. And as I am talking about it, I kind of discover my problem. And that in itself is hugely useful, So I agree. Sometimes just listening is enough, or, to start.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen closely, even if you listen closely, like one meeting after the other, you'll find a pattern, right? Someone will come to you with different problems, or they might seem like different problems. But if you are attentive enough, you might see the commonalities and like, you talked about this and that. I think that what actually bothers you is this, which is the underlying problem for all the other things you just talked about for the last month.
Right.
So try and like be the one who takes a step back and see the commonalities and see the underlying problem, and not what he thinks is the problem.
And that must be amazingly valuable for the mentee, right? You mentioned 4 different problems, but actually, from what I'm seeing, the root cause is X,
Right.
Let's tackle the root cause together. I love that. So thank you for sharing kind of more specifics here. So in the absence of questions right now, I wanted to move on to kind of more of the, the general topic that we've got in terms of advice for first line managers. Oh, Junior is in the comments. He's saying rubber ducking. Right.
Sure.
We're familiar with the concept, right?
Yeah. So I was waiting for the chance to introduce my rubber ducking, and thank you, Junior, for the comment. So this is my rubber ducking. So I'm working from home, so it gets pretty lonely here. So I have my rubber ducky here, and we're talking about things.
What? Is it like a magnet kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want one of those. Wow. Gosh. Okay. Yeah, Junior. Thank you so much for the comment.
Yeah. So I think rubber ducking is great. I mean, but the rubber duck, for what it's worth, isn't able to take the step back. So rubber ducky listens to you, which is great, and gives you the opportunity to like put things out there and like understand yourself. But you also want someone to give you the mirror, saying, "Hey, this is what you actually should be talking about. This is what you meant to talk about, not what you said."
Yes, Baby Yoda is very wise, but does not actually speak. I think his name's Grogu, or I mean, somebody
I think so. I just finished seeing that series now, so yeah, Grogu is the name.
Yeah, very wise, but they probably can't find the root cause for you just by being the rubber duck. Krzysztof was saying in the comments, I want this. But aside from the comments, that are just saying very nice, there is a comment from Pavel that I wanted to highlight that is kind of bringing us back to earth here. I wonder what you would say to that.
Sure.
Pavel was saying, we just talked about mentoring, meeting, listening a lot, reading between the lines. So Pavel was asking, can you even focus that much for each person when you run a team to read between the lines for everyone? I am very curious about your answer.
I think that's a great question, Pavel. I would say a few things about it. I mean, I don't have a definite answer yet, and I'm not sure there is really an answer for everyone. And I think the basic answer is that at the beginning, no, but as you become better at it, it will become like second nature to you. And when someone talks, you will automatically think, okay, what is he trying to tell me? What is he trying to tell me? So at the beginning, no, you should probably choose one or two and focus on them and hone your skills and just get better at it. But also, people are different from one another. I mean, whatever makes one person tick won't help another person, won't make another person tick, and everyone needs to be managed and mentored differently. So
Yeah.
you'll need to get a lot of tools on your belt. But I think that in general, I don't know. I mean, you should treat the fact that you're a manager, or your managerial skills, the same way you expect your ICs to hone their technical skills. I mean, you're not an IC who's also managing someone. You're a manager, which might do some IC work, which is fine. But once you're a manager, that's your up and foremost job, and you should invest in it. I mean, we all go and learn our skills and go to university or courses or whatnot. But once we become a manager, we don't always go and learn and read books and hone our skills because, okay, I'm also a manager, but I'm also an IC. I think you should hone your skills like you expect your people to hone their technical skills, and you'll get better at it. And if you're not able to mentor everyone, that's fine. Just do a round robin. Say, okay, I'm going to focus on this guy this week and on that guy that week, and maybe the color coding can help you in your team as well. So you can decide who you're going to focus on this week by doing a color coding checkup on your team. And if you see someone who is struggling, or you see his performance drop, for example, so something is happening. So prioritize them.
Okay. One question just out of my own curiosity here. These sessions, choosing who to focus on, would that in your experience happen like as part of a regular weekly one-on-one, or are these kind of additional sessions? Just curious here, honestly.
So for me, I use the one-on-ones to identify the problem and then take them the more in-depth session on a more specific, ad hoc meeting. Preferably in a different environment, either a coffee or somewhere else, which is not like it's not in between meetings, and he's not on their computer in the meantime, and he doesn't have in his mind that he also needs to update you on his progress. No, it's a dedicated meeting just for us to chat and see what's wrong, what's happening, how can I help you. Preferably in a different environment. It doesn't have to be, but if it's in the same environment as you usually do it, either it's because you're working remotely, that's fine. But set the ground that this is a different discussion. We're not going to talk about your ongoing tasks. We're not going to talk about expectations. We're going to talk about you and what's bothering you. And that's it.
Wow. I love that, because I feel like the one-on-ones are usually, like you mentioned, we're going down the list, there's status updates, and in between that, there are bigger problems flagged that really deserve their own meeting, different context, and different way of thinking about it. So thank you for adding that additional detail here. Thank you, Pavel, for the question. We got 2 more questions in the meantime, so I feel like before we get into the kind of what we had planned for the session, we have quite a bit more to address from the comments. Love it. Keep them coming. So Kasim is asking, related to what you were just talking about, really. You're a manager who is also doing some IC work. So the question from Kasim is, how do you keep improving your hands-on skills while managing? My additional question for that would be, how high would you put that actually on your list of priorities as a manager?
So I think obviously there's no one answer, right, for everyone. And I think it touches to a discussion you had with Arvo, I think his name was.
Alvaro, you mean?
Alvaro a year back.
Yeah.
You need to get clear expectations from your manager, how much he expects you to be hands-on and how much. I mean, what's the priority? Because eventually you need to answer to them, right? So you should know what to expect and what he expects from you. Personally, I would lean into more managerial. I mean, if the balance should be more on the manager part and then the IC part, because if you're a good manager, so the entire group is working more effectively. Whereas if you're effective IC, just you're working more effectively. So it's a force multiplier. So I would lean into the managerial part. Obviously, sometimes you can't have it like in the optimal way because there are very tight deadlines, very strict requirements for the company, which is fine. And it's also fine to have this discussion with your manager saying, hey, I want to invest more time in my people. I know there's a very tight schedule now, and I know this is a priority now, but let's see how we build a plan in place that I will be able to invest more time in my people because I see it's required and they need it. So it's okay to have it gradual. It's okay to have a plan to get there. But in my opinion, if you have a requirement for both, I would lean into the managerial part.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel that strongly because sometimes I think you already have that habit of building your hands-on skills. This is what helps you kind of advance to the leadership position. But once you get there, you discover it's a different type of work. And, it's not, 1 or 0. It's not binary that now you're a manager 100%. Well, whereas previously you were 0%, but it's like a spectrum. And you don't even know when you go from just doing a little bit of leadership,
Right, and I think it's also easy for us or for people who started as an IC and became managers. It's very easy to give ourselves excuses like, but they really need my help in the technical part. I really have to do that because that's what we've been doing for our life, and that's the reason we were promoted to be managers, because we were really good at it. But we need to stop giving the excuses and let them fall and do the managerial part. And obviously, as I mentioned before, with expectation setting with your manager, but should try and make sure you don't have a bias for the IC part, because that's what you're comfortable with and that's what's easy for you. Because the soft parts, the managerial parts, are harder. It's harder to do. It's more abstract, and it's harder to see immediate impact, because the impact might be in a year time, and it's much more rewarding to write code and see it work in the next day, right? But you should try and avoid it. I mean, try and lean to the other part.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so much more fuzzy. I think one of the Tech Leaders Hub guests mentioned that they prefer to manage people because it's more. It was Evgeny from SoundCloud. I remember. It's a more complex problem. It's more fuzzy. It's more rewarding when it works, but things are less clear. There's not such clear cause and effect. Even sometimes you can give the advice. You think you've had a great mentoring session helping somebody, and they say it was okay. You check in 2 weeks later and they say, actually, this was not helpful. Short term, I thought it helped, but it didn't actually resolve my problem. And that's tough. And as you mentioned before, there's no Stack Overflow for this, right? So that makes it even more difficult.
I mean, that interaction is great. I mean, I would lean in and ask, okay, why didn't it help you? Why did we initially think it will help, and why didn't it help? And then that will build better. Like, what are your misconceptions on his problem, and what is his misconception about how to solve this? And you can fine tune your relationship.
Yeah.
Right. The same way that you have a bug in your code, and then you see where the bug is and you fix it. So something didn't work, there's a bug, go and fix it. Don't just move to the next line. Go fix the bug. Go understand why it happened and go fix it.
You didn't fail. You just found something that didn't work, and that's progress in itself.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you, Kasim, for the question. I hope we addressed it in the right way for you. By all means, follow up if you want. And now I wanted to focus on Ohad in the comments. I'm sorry if I butchered the name. Do you know how that's pronounced?
You didn't. Ohad is right.
Okay. So Ohad, first of all, he mentioned walking meetings, I think, when we were talking about these separate, deeper meetings in a different context.
Right.
But he also had a question, so let's read that out. Well, maybe somebody was reading the agenda for this, but I'm glad this question got asked because I know you've got a book to recommend. Okay, let me read it first. The question is, which books would you recommend for a manager to read? And Itai, go give your recommendations.
Yeah, so I know there are a myriad of books, and I don't have a full list, and sadly, I don't remember the books I've read. I remember a few of them. I think I started my managerial book reading with Simon Sinek, Start with Why, and then Leaders Eat Last, which were great books. I mean, they opened my thinking into the more soft skills of managers, and not just, okay, I'm the technical manager and this is how you do things right. Like for more the opened my mind to the more soft requirements, what you need to give your team on like a more emotional aspects. And actually through Simon Sinek was introduced to a book, which is currently my number one favorite. And for this show, I actually got the hard copy from a friend. This
seriously?
is the book. Okay. It's called Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet. That's a great managerial book, in my opinion, and it's currently my number one favorite. I would give a very short explanation of the book because I don't want to butcher it.
Sure.
It talks about a Navy commander who gets command on his own submarine. But 2 weeks before deployment, he gets the news that the submarine he thought he's going to have is a different submarine, different class submarine, different type, different crew. And he got the worst crew in the Navy. And he quickly understood that he cannot rely on his technical knowledge in order to captain the ship because he doesn't know anything about this class of submarines. And he has to rely on his teammates, and he has to make his teammates leaders and not followers. The few reasons why I really love this book. First of all, I mean, you read it, Jacob. It's a great read. It's hard to put down, right? It's just written.
Definitely, for sure.
So this is just one reason. Even if a book has great managerial aspects, but it's hard to read. I mean, it's rough. It's work, but this is just fun to read. And I really love that every chapter ends with a section of questions you should ask yourself about your organization, which will help you apply the concept he discussed in his chapter to your environment, to your company, to your team. So sometimes it's hard to do the mental jump between what you just read from the submarine to managing a team of 4 engineers doing whatnot. But he gives you the right framework and right questions to ask in order to get there, which is very beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. And yes, I'm actually almost done reading the book. But like you mentioned, it's hard to put down because there's these stories in between. I mean, it's got this whole, you can visualize these people on the submarine, solving their problems, running drills, having meetings. And it was actually shocking for me how similar in some respects it is running a submarine to running a business. I never thought of it that way. The questions that are ready to go there are extremely useful. And I really love the kind of overarching idea of, instead of having this leader-follower structure, having a leader-leader structure. It's explained a lot better in the book than we are explaining here, obviously. But just this mindset shift of, I don't have followers, I have leaders of their own areas, and I'm supporting them as the kind of leader of the whole. That opened my eyes, definitely, and I'm so glad you recommended the book to me.
Right, I appreciate it, and I think that, again, not to Alvaro also touched a similar point where you want to train people to do your job, or right. So when you implement the leader philosophy or way of doing things, you actually, as the leader, you don't wait for people to come to you and say, hey, what do you think we should do? They should come with I intend to do something, and explain to you why they think this is the right thing to do. And they should explain in the way that you'll be convinced, and you'll just say, yes, I agree. And whenever they come and present the decision to you, if they're missing some things, you should ask questions so that next time they will come and they know what to present in advance. And what that brings them to is that the fact is that they're going to do your job. They just did all the job you wanted to do. They asked all the right questions you would have asked. They just need your approval. So they're ready to do your job. They just need the authority.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a big lesson for me, not just from this book, but in general. Getting the question, what should I do? You're really tempted to just give the solution, give advice, give your solution, honestly, which might not be the best solution. The author of the book really emphasizes that the crew of the ship, they're intelligent people, creative people with problem-solving skills, and you shouldn't limit those skills. So instead of giving the right solution, the right way to answer that is, what is your suggested course of action? there needs to be one. And as these suggested courses of action, I mean, the initial ideas might not be useful, but as they learn your way of thinking and they get the context of the organization to pick the right course of action, then they become independent, and it's so good to see.
Right, and this also touches to how we answered Kasim in the previous question. I mean, it's very tempting to go and say this is the solution because you were promoted to be a manager because you did do the job better than most people in the team. But you should resist that urge and don't do this job because you're just like giving them fish and not teaching them how to fish, right? So you should resist the urge. And I think the funny thing about this book is I read it, obviously, and one of these concepts actually came up in one of the interview questions when I interviewed for Google, where like, what do you do with a dysfunctional team? And the fact is that, like David Marquette in the book, he didn't swap the team, right? He didn't say, okay, I'm going to fire everyone and get a new crew. This is the crew I have. I assume they're good. They might have different motivations and they're not motivated enough. We need to understand what makes them tick, and I'll work with what I have.
Exactly. Wow, it's so nice that you mentioned kind of one of the questions from the interview. Obviously, people are so curious about that. What do you do with a dysfunctional team? I should have a good answer for that too. For sometime maybe. Anyway, Ohad, thank you so much for the question. Oh, I did want to ask a follow-up question. Did you have any? Because obviously we love the book. I was wondering if you had like any concrete examples already of how you applied the book, maybe on something specific that you wanted to mention. It's okay if you don't, but just wanted to kind of check if something's there.
So I'm tempted to say no because I think the examples are pretty personal. So whoever is listening might understand what I'm talking about, and but I'll give a very general example. So I think that it comes to the fact that I would like to let people fall, and I want to be the safety net. The question is how high you set the net, right? You should let people fall. Just put the net there. Make sure they know there's a net. But the height of the net really depends on the person, how risk averse you are and how they are, and are you willing to let them fall? So it comes down to the same thing, right? Someone comes to you with a task they have now to do, and maybe they don't exactly know how to do it, which is fine. Do you do it for them, or do you give them guidelines and let them go and come back to you with their current findings, and you just fine tune from there? So try and lean to that. You should also always, there's an urge to, but we have a deadline, we need to meet the deadline. But I think that might touch to our next point maybe, but sometimes you need to let things fall and build the infrastructure. And the infrastructure in that case is the actual people. You need to build the people. So he will be slower in this task, but the next tasks he will be able to do himself.
Exactly. And I mean, like it or not, failure is a great teacher, right? Making mistakes can be very educational. So I love the concept of a safety net. And I especially like that you're framing it as a spectrum, right? You set it high, set it low, let them fall a little bit further. The risk, I think, as people within your team even advance, right? Let them take on a little bit more risk because they're ready for it. Is a great kind of mental model, if I may say so.
And some people, even if they're experienced, they're more scared and they need the net to be closer. I mean, it's not like you can say, okay, for this type of people, I'm going to put the net here, and for that level, I put the net there. It should be individual. Some people like to fall and like the risk. Some people don't like it, and that's fine. You need to set their net at the height which is relevant for each one of your people.
Exactly. I feel that very strongly. I'm glad we mentioned it. Glad I asked a follow-up question. And Ohad, thank you for your question that led to this whole part of the conversation. And now that is very true. I did want to move on to another thing that we kind of had in our outline, this tentative promise that we'll discuss it. We managed to touch upon 3 out of the 4 things that are kind of mentioned in the description of this event. But there's still this thing called why you need to stop chasing cows and build fences.
Right.
Obviously, I wrote it in a way that's kind of mysterious. So can you explain, Itai, what we mean here by stop chasing cows, start building fences, and how that is relevant for first-line managers?
Not relevant, only if you want to work with cows. No, so we touched, it's very similar to what we talked about now, but the story behind, or the metaphor behind this phrase, is that someone goes to visit his friends in a village, and he sees him chasing after the cows in the meadow, and like all the cows are just scattering around, and he's chasing after them, trying to bring them back. And he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "What do you mean? I'm chasing the cows. They ran away." Like, okay, but you should build some fences. Like, who has time to build fences? I need to chase the cows. So that's like the premise of this phrase, where you need to stop and build fences instead of just chasing cows. Obviously, you can't let all the cows run away. There are some cows which are more important than others, which you can not let run away. But you should invest in the infrastructure, in the fences, in the stuff which will make your life and the cows' lives easier in the future. Just to make sure the cows here are the tasks, right? Not people. The cows here are the tasks and projects you have at hand. So some projects obviously are critical and cannot be delayed, so you should chase those cows. And some projects can sustain a small delay or even a cancellation, just for the greater good of the team and velocity in the future.
Right. So would you have any specific examples of, fences that are worth building? Maybe the fences that you should build kind of the soonest, the structures that you should put in place that are going to help keep the most of the cows contained?
Sure. So I think it's always easy to say, and everyone knows it in theory, but in practice, we try to avert it sometimes. Testing infrastructures when you're building a tech project or tech group. So, for example, in one of my previous companies, we had a testing infrastructure which was a bit outdated and was very hard to work with. And the result of that was that people avoided writing tests in that infrastructure. And we got very low coverage of tests, and the code we released was in pretty low quality. So I was willing to cancel one of the features which we were supposed to ship in the next project or the next release, and actually took 2 people to write a new testing infrastructure from bottom up, and it took a year, and that was fine. And people will tell me, "Hey, you have some features, you have some bugs, you need to solve them." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to solve them, but these 2 people are dedicated to that task because that will help me in the future." And after a year, that was released, and that became the standard testing infrastructure for the group, and then for other groups in the company as well. And in the long term, it improved our velocity and the quality of code we released. So the specific version got hurt. I mean, we canceled a feature or so. We were probably delayed, or we could have done things sooner. But for the long run, that was beneficial.
Yeah,
that's
I really
one example.
feel that. Yeah. No, by all means, if that's one example, is there another?
Yeah, I mean, a similar example is that, it's pretty similar, but we had a specific way of doing the QA cycles in the company. And it's a very complex project and a very complex system. And we had very robust tests in place in the QA. But tests were being known very late in the project because there was no systematic way of testing it layer by layer. So me and a few people from the company set aside and created a whole new way to test versions at all in the product. Just create the testing theory or paradigm in the company. And the result of that was a new paradigm of how to test the product. But in order to implement that, we had to start all the testing of the version from start. So people were saying, "Hey, but we need to go back now. We're already halfway there." And we insisted that even though we're halfway there, we don't really know that we're halfway there because there were problems with visibility there. We're going to start from scratch. If everything works, we'll just advance very fast, right? Because everything works. But we're going to start everything from scratch. We're going to do it the right way. And this is the standard way now, and things are much better.
Okay. Wow. I'm really glad that you brought kind of specific examples also from the tech side here, because this is Tech Leaders Hub. So thank you for adding that in there too. A piece I wanted to add to that was a little bit of a book recommendation from my end. I'm reading something. This really reminds me of the book that I'm reading right now, actually, and it's called "Be Your Future Self Now." I feel like the kind of moves that you're mentioning here is really something that your present self, your present team, what you're doing in your present situation, that is maybe a bit of a sacrifice in the short term, but long term, you're making the life of your future self, your future team much easier. And the whole premise of the book is really to keep doing that, keep making investments in the now into what your future self is going to benefit from. Just wanted to put it out there. I love that book, really like the author, so some people might want to pick that up.
I'll check it out.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Right. So we've only got 5 more minutes on the clock here, dear watchers and listeners. If you've got any more additional questions, that would be a great time to add them in. In the meantime, one thing that I kind of got used to asking is the "Have I missed anything?" question. So Itai, was there anything else that within the topic at large that we have, or maybe something that you mentioned that you wanted to expand on that I kind of failed to ask about, and you wanted to add so that the people listening who might be first-time managers or thinking about becoming them, or maybe mentoring first-time managers, that they can benefit from? Is there anything else to add here?
I would say that in order to do most of these things, you should be able to allow yourself, one, to feel vulnerable, and two, to make mistakes, right? I mean, even if you build fences and you let a cow run away, you might have let the wrong cow run away, and you will make mistake. It doesn't mean that the process is wrong. It just means that you chose the wrong cow to let run away. And for serendipity and for everything, the same. You should allow yourself to do mistakes the same way you allow your ICs to do mistake in their work. Just learn from them and make sure that the mistakes are small and manageable. And in general, there's a saying which my mom gave me, which is always good. The answer for not trying is always no. Just try. Try, make it contained, obviously, so the pain won't be too much if you lost. But if you don't try, you won't be there. So try, reach out to people, ask people if they'll be your mentor, ask people if they're willing to share their experience with you. Try. Worst case scenario, they say no and you're in the same place you are now.
Yes, exactly. I feel that really strongly, Itai. And for example, even these Tech Leaders Hub sessions, obviously I don't have like 100% conversion rate on my invitations. I invite a lot of people. Not everybody says yes, but if I never send the invites, it's going to be a no from everyone, right?
Exactly. I saw your picture with Kermit the Frog. That was great.
Yes, because they really, they view the profile and then they decide that's not for me, and I have to accept that. So one more follow-up question for that, and then we'll get into the kind of the end part. Your announcements, our announcements, and I did want to tease people a little bit about the session that we have next week. So more details about that in a sec. But one final question for me, something that just came to my mind is, so you mentioned even as a manager, you make mistakes. That happens. I've had it happen definitely in my situation as well. Do you have advice on how to address that? How to go forward, go in front of the team, and talk about a mistake that you've made that may have affected them? I feel like these are one of the most difficult situations that you might have as a manager. From your experience, is there any way to handle that kind of situation?
Sure. So first of all, I would say that the same way that the best situation that one of your teammates can do mistakes if they know you have their back, you should know that your manager has your back. That will give you a lot more confidence to do mistakes because you won't feel under pressure to perform 100%. They'll know that you're experimenting, and they'll know you're gonna make mistakes. And you can tell them, listen, I need your help with this. I need your help with that. I'm gonna try this. It might fail. Just heads up. So just do the expectation setting with your manager and make sure they have your back, because if they don't, it will be very hard for you to fail because you'll feel under scrutiny all the time. So this is one advice. The second advice is, and I'm trying to do it with my team, I'm very candid from the beginning. Listen, I'm going to make mistakes the same way that you are. And the same way that you expect me to give you feedback, I expect you to give me feedback and be honest. And at the end of the day, we'll go drink a beer afterwards. That's fine. But give me honest feedback, and I'll give you honest feedback. And just make sure that, just so you know, my intentions are good. I want to be there for you. Everything I'm doing here is to advance the group, the product, and you as people. And I'm going to make mistakes, and that's fine. And when I do, I would own them the same way that I expect you to own your mistakes.
There you go. I love that. So glad that you shared that, and I think it makes for A great stopping point, unfortunately, for the session. We've reached the 1 hour mark. It went by so quickly. Itai, I was just mentioning, the invitations that I sent out, the no's that I got, but I'm so glad that the answer from you was a yes. So thank you so much for being a guest on our session. It was
Thank you,
honestly a
Jakob.
blast. So just final housekeeping. I wanted to ask Itai from your end, do you have any announcements? Do you want people to click a link, go somewhere, apply for something, sign up, anything?
No, this is just for you. If you want to reach out for any questions or individual help from me, I'm always happy to help people. So no string is attached, obviously. If you have any question, even if it's a follow-up on this session or just a general question you want to pick my brain with, I'm happy to help every time. And nothing, no, I don't have any agenda to to advance here. So that's it.
Okay. Well, what is the best platform to reach out to you on?
LinkedIn or email. I don't do Facebook so much, so LinkedIn or email is great. If you send me a LinkedIn request, please just mention that you heard me here, because otherwise I might not accept. But if you mention this session, I will obviously accept.
Tell Itai Tech Leaders Hub sent you.
Exactly.
Do that, please. Yeah, we've got a bunch of things in the comments. Gonna highlight them just real quick in here. Pavel is saying greetings
Yeah,
from
Pavel, I
ScaleIO.
recognize your name. I remember you, man. I'm gonna come to Poland and see. So Pavel is from Poland. You should too schedule.
Hey, yeah, there's a high likelihood that another session might come from this one. Gal is saying thanks. Another gal is saying thanks. Lucas is saying great episode. He might be a little bit biased though. And yeah, wow. Okay, so thank you for all of these comments. Oh, Gal Victor is saying, love your mom's concept of do your best and try. Yes, that is very, very true. Now, from our end, some of you people might be meeting Tech Leaders Hub and STX Next for the first time. I just wanted to let you know that if you're curious about what we do, we're Europe's largest software development company. I had this whole thing prepared. What we do basically is, when we look at the world right now, every company is building software, but not every company is going to build it kind of fast enough and well enough to survive in the market. Our job is to help you build the software fast enough and well enough. We've got some of the best talent in Poland when it comes to developers, designers, DevOps, machine learning, you name it, we got it. If your product is in Python or uses Python, JavaScript, Node.js, that kind of tech stack, you can reach out to us and we can help. For more Tech Leaders Hub, so for that, go to stxnext.com if you've got a need. For more Tech Leaders Hub, go to techleadershub.com. I can already invite you to the session next week. That's going to be with Meital Raviv. And it's going to be about the love-hate relationship between fintechs and banks. So that's going to be an episode of Tech Leaders Hub FinTech, actually, which is like a separate kind of thread that we've got within Tech Leaders Hub. It's happening next Wednesday, July 13th. Don't miss it. We'll put a link in the comments here. Follow STX Next primarily on LinkedIn to get informed about Tech Leaders Hub sessions. Subscribe to our newsletter and you'll get emailed about our upcoming sessions. I know it's a lot of things to do. Just do one of them and we'll be happy, okay? Whichever of them. Right. So many more comments saying thank you. I can't possibly highlight them all, but thank you all so much, watchers and listeners, for attending this Tech Leaders Hub session. Itai, any final thoughts before we end the broadcast?
No, I enjoyed myself, and thank you very much for making this happen.
Yes, it was so fun. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time, next Wednesday in this particular instance. Have a great day, everyone.